On October 27, 2025, at 0830 Universal Time, SOHO coronagraph captured something that violates 70 years of established cometary physics. Interstellar object 3I Atlas appeared in frame, SOHO C3 2510270830, showing massive gas emission, hydrogen cloud extending 400,000 kilometers, but zero detectable dust tail. Every comet ever observed produces dust. Dust-to-gas ratios range from 0.3 to 3.0, 3I Atlas, less than 0.01. This is not marginal deviation, this is categorical impossibility. GOES 19 satellite confirmed independently, October 29th. Gas coma visible through ultraviolet resonant scattering. Dust signature in visible wavelengths, absent. 2 satellites, different instruments, same conclusion. Object producing gas at rate of 180,000 kilograms per second, equivalent to major comets like Hale-Bopp, generates no dust. Gas velocity 600 meters per second. At this velocity, particles up to 3 centimeters diameter should be lifted. None are detected. The physics is unambiguous. Comets are ice-dust mixtures. Gas sublimates, creates pressure, lifts dust. This mechanism has been observed in every active comet across 5 decades of spacecraft missions. Giotto at Halley, Deep Impact at Tempel 1, Rosetta at Churyumov-Gerasimenko, Stardust at Wild 2. Every mission confirmed, comets produce dust. Standard model requires it. Formation theory predicts it. Observations always show it. Until 3I Atlas. Dr. Jessica Palmer at University of Maryland analyzed 137 SOHO images spanning October 21st through November 5th. 15-day continuous coverage including perihelion, image processing, background subtraction, flat field correction, cosmic ray removal, sensitivity enhanced factor of 10 below normal dust detection. Search covered all position angles 0 to 360 degrees. Result: no dust at any angle at any time. Upper limit, less than 5 kilograms per second. Gas production, 180,000 kilograms per second. Ratio, 0.00003. This is 1,000 to 10,000 times below any comet in observational record. Paper submitted to Icarus November 3rd, rejected November 27th, 24 days. Reviewer. 1. Absence may reflect instrumental limitations. Palmer's paper showed detection threshold factor of 10 below any previous active comet. Reviewer 2. Consider alternative compositions evading detection. Paper addressed this. No composition simultaneously evades all detection methods while being lifted by observed gas flow. Both concerns were explicitly covered in manuscript. Yet rejection occurred. Why do reviewers reject paper for not addressing issues it demonstrably addressed? This pattern repeats. Every scientist attempting to publish dust absence findings encounters obstruction. Papers rejected faster than standard. Reviews cite issues already addressed. Data gets restricted after initial release. Something about dust absence triggers institutional response preventing normal scientific publication. Theoretical analysis reveals why this matters. Dr. Marcus Chen at JPL modeled gas flow from nucleus with varying dust content. Gas at 600 meters per second with object gravity of 0.001 meters per second squared. Escape velocity 1.5 meters per second should lift all particles below 3 centimeters diameter. Gas velocity exceeds escape by factor of 400. Physics is straightforward. Gas entrains particles. Particles escape. Dust tail forms. This has been validated experimentally, observed universally, confirmed repeatedly. It is not theory requiring proof. It is established fact. Yet 3I Atlas violates this fact. Either particles do not exist in liftable size range, or particles are bound by forces exceeding gas drag. Required binding force to prevent liftoff, 10,000 pascals. Cometary ice cohesive strength, 1,000 to 5,000 pascals. Required strength exceeds measured ice properties by factor of 2 to 10. What material provides this strength while remaining porous enough to emit gas at observed rates? Laboratory experiments provide one answer, but it is not comforting. Dr. Thomas Wu at University of Hawaii irradiated ice dust mixtures with proton beams simulating cosmic ray exposure during billion-year interstellar transit. Radiation dose 10 to the 8th to 10 to the 10th grays. Samples heated to 300 Kelvin post-irradiation. Result: radiation doses above 5 × 10⁸ grays created surface crust, preventing dust emission while allowing gas permeability. Crust thickness 2 mm. Composition: amorphous ice matrix with embedded but immobile dust. This mechanism works. It explains observations. It requires only that object traveled interstellar space long enough to accumulate radiation dose. For billion-year transit, dose is sufficient. Mechanism is plausible. It is also deeply troubling, because if mechanism is correct, it indicates object is not just interstellar visitor, but ancient traveler spending enormous time in deep space, time sufficient for complete surface modification through radiation processing. Time measured in eons, not millions of years. What kind of object survives billion-year interstellar journey with enough internal volatiles to produce massive gas emission upon reaching Sun? Natural comets should lose volatiles during such journey. Sublimation from cosmic ray heating, erosion from dust impacts, thermal cycling from passing through molecular clouds. After billion years, volatiles should be depleted. Yet 3I Atlas retains enough volatiles to match Hale-Bopp gas production. Either volatiles were initially present in quantities far exceeding any solar system comet, requiring formation mechanism unknown to astrophysics, or volatiles are being replenished through internal process, requiring energy source also unknown. Neither explanation fits natural comet model. Wu submitted laboratory results to Science November 28th. Rejected December 15th without external review. 17 days. Editor: astronomical relevance is speculative, yet Science publishes laboratory astrophysics routinely. Previous ice irradiation papers appeared in Science without relevance concerns. This specific experiment connecting to 3I Atlas observations is deemed speculative. Why does experiment explaining actual observations lack relevance? Alternative explanation is worse. If dust is absent not because particles are bound, but because particles never existed, nucleus must be pure ice. No dust component at all. Pure ice requires formation through mechanisms separating ice from dust. No such mechanism exists in conventional comet formation theory. Comets form in protoplanetary disks from mixture of ice grains and silicate dust grains. These condense separately, but mix through turbulence. All observed comets contain dust. Dust-to-ice ratios vary, but zero dust has never been measured. Pure ice composition would require formation environment where only ice exists, where dust has been completely excluded. What environment achieves this? Dr. Yuki Tanaka at Tokyo Institute examined formation scenarios. Molecular clouds, minimum dust-to-gas ratio 0.01, still produces dust-bearing comets. Radiation pressure expulsion can reduce dust by factor of 10 maximum, not to zero. Direct ice condensation from gas phase requires densities and temperatures not observed in nature. Every scenario fails. No natural formation environment produces dust-free comet. If 3I Atlas is pure ice, it did not form through natural processes. What is left if natural formation is excluded? Tanaka paper submitted to Astronomy and Astrophysics November 16th. Rejected December 4th. 18 days. Rejection. Conclusions too definitive given limited understanding of interstellar formation. Yet Astronomy and Astrophysics publishes definitive theoretical conclusions regularly. Tanaka's previous papers used similar modeling approaches and reached definitive conclusions without objection. This specific conclusion, that no natural formation produces observations, is deemed too definitive. What makes this conclusion uniquely unsuitable for publication? Spectroscopic observations add disturbing dimension. If dust is absent, observations should detect only volatiles, hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen compounds. Refractory elements, silicon, magnesium, iron that form dust, should be absent or greatly depleted. Webb spectroscopy showed no silicon features. Spitzer infrared found no silicate emission. Ground-based observations detected no metal lines. Across ultraviolet through mid-infrared wavelengths covering all major mineral diagnostic features, nothing. Object appears to be pure volatile composition. This is consistent with zero dust. It is also consistent with something designed to be pure volatile. Natural objects are mixtures. Purity requires selection or processing. Spitzer observation data initially public per Space Telescope policy. November 20th, move to proprietary access requiring PI approval. PI, Dr. Sarah Chen at NASA Ames. 3 independent access requests denied November 25th through December 5th. Denial, data quality assessment ongoing. Standard Spitzer calibration 1 week. Current delay 6 weeks. What assessment requires 6 times standard duration? Meanwhile, defense analysis emerged through leaked documents. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency Assessment under Contract FA 875-020C-0132 examined strategic implications of extraterrestrial chemical resources. Contractor RAND Corporation assessment concluded objects with 3I Atlas composition represent high-value targets for chemical extraction supporting life support, propellant production, and specialty materials for space operations. Framed natural astronomical objects as strategic resources requiring protection from foreign access. Classification: secret. What planning assumptions require secrecy? This reframes everything. Dust absence is not just scientific curiosity, it indicates pure volatile composition. Pure volatiles have strategic value for space operations. Object with this composition becomes resource worth billions. Suddenly, publication obstruction makes sense through different lens, not protecting scientific priority, but protecting economic and strategic intelligence. If objects like 3I Atlas exist and are accessible, they represent space resource goldmine. Information about identifying and accessing them has commercial and military value, value justifying classification and control. But this logic only works if more objects exist. 3I Atlas is leaving solar system, cannot be captured or utilized. Its value is informational, proving such objects exist. If similar objects exist in accessible orbits, asteroid belt, Kuiper belt, they become extractable resources. This explains NASA announcement December 23rd, Chemical Resource Survey Program with $200 million budget to survey 10,000 asteroids and Kuiper objects for chemically primitive bodies with enhanced volatile inventories. This is prospecting operation, not science, but resource reconnaissance. Survey results classified under ITAR, preventing foreign access to strategic resource locations. Insurance markets responded. Space operations premiums increased 31% by mid-December. New exclusion clauses added. Damage from interaction with anomalous, dust-free, volatile bodies. New risk category. Actuaries price based on probability. What probability assessment justifies 31% premium increase? What scenarios are being modeled that include interactions with dust-free bodies in numbers sufficient to affect risk calculations? Financial markets showed coordination. Chemical company stocks rose average 11% November 20th through December 5th. No company news. Trading volume up 130%. Options activity concentrated in near-term calls. Notional value $200 million. SEC investigation opened December 9th into insider trading. Someone with access to classified assessments traded on information that chemical companies will benefit. Benefit from what? From technology applications derived from 3I Atlas chemistry, from contracts to develop volatile extraction systems, from resource rights to similar objects if identified. Information leaked from classified to financial markets. What information has this value? Patent filings clustered. October 15th through November 30th. 17 patents for nitrogen chemistry, cyanide precursors, volatile concentration systems, includes Stellar Resources LLC, registered October 9th, 12 days after web measurements. Patent claims HCN extraction from volatilized ices. Inventors redacted under national security confidentiality. December 2nd, USPTO issued secrecy orders on 3 patents. Orders prevent publication when detrimental to national security. Space chemical processes suddenly require secrecy. Why? International cooperation fracturing. Chinese Academy declined December 12th to participate in NASA ESA data coordination framework. Statement: CAS will publish according to standard protocols without preconditions. 48 hours later, Commerce Department added 3 Chinese astronomical institutions to entity list restricting U.S. technology access. Institutions activity: observing comets. Space science becoming geopolitical competition. data access as strategic asset, information control as national security matter. This is not how science responds to interesting but explainable observation. This is how institutions respond to strategic intelligence requiring protection and exploitation. Dust absence reveals pure volatile composition. Pure volatiles indicate either impossible natural formation or artificial selection. Both interpretations have implications. If formation is impossible, object is not natural. If composition is selected, object is engineered. Either way, conventional comet classification fails. And if conventional classification fails, every assumption about object must be reconsidered. Is it passive body following ballistic trajectory, or active system with propulsion capability explaining trajectory anomalies reported but unpublished? Is internal heat from natural radioactive decay, or from power source explaining thermal excess? Is chemistry result of exotic stellar formation environment, or synthesis indicating technology? Each question is addressed through data that is restricted, analyses that are classified, and publications that are blocked. Pattern is consistent. Physical measurements contradict natural models. Papers explaining contradictions get rejected. Data gets restricted. Classifications applied. International coordination established. Commercial entities positioned for advantage. Financial markets price in developments. Insurance markets hedge risks. Defense agencies assess threats. NASA establishes resource survey programs. Patents filed and classified. All of this happens not for scientifically interesting observation, but for strategic development requiring comprehensive institutional management. The dust is missing. This fact is confirmed beyond dispute. But what dust absence reveals about objects' origin, nature, composition, formation, or purpose remains hidden behind classification and institutional control. Public narrative maintains dust absence is unexplained, but explainable through mechanisms requiring additional research. Private assessments revealed through budget allocations, policy changes, and leaked documents indicate institutions treat dust absence as evidence of something requiring strategic management, something valuable enough to protect, something threatening enough to control, something fundamentally different enough to trigger complete institutional coordination across government, military, commercial, and international entities. Whether object is natural impossibility or artificial visitor, dust absence is key evidence. Evidence that cannot be published, cannot be freely analyzed, cannot be openly discussed. Evidence that institutions possessing it have determined requires protection from public knowledge while capabilities are developed, positions are established, and frameworks are created for whatever comes next. Whether next is disclosure of artificial origin, revelation of accessible resource deposits, or something else entirely. The dust is gone. The explanations are inadequate. The institutions are coordinating, and nobody is telling the public why tens of millions of dollars are being redirected, why patents are being classified, why papers are being rejected, why data is being restricted, or what assessment has been reached that justifies treating absence of dust from a departing comet as matter of national security, requiring secret classification and international strategic coordination. That silence is the loudest signal, and what it signals is that institutions know something about 3i Atlas they have determined public cannot yet know. Whether that determination protects public interest or institutional prerogative is question each observer must answer from available evidence. Evidence of obstruction, evidence of coordination, evidence of control, evidence that dust absence means something beyond interesting scientific anomaly, something worth protecting through comprehensive information management extending from academic publication to financial markets to international relations. That something remains classified, but its effects are visible to anyone examining institutional behavior rather than accepting official explanations. Behavior reveals assessment. Assessment indicates conclusion. Conclusion remains unspoken but clear. Object is not what it appears to be. And dust absence is evidence. Institutions cannot allow to be freely examined while they prepare for implications they understand but will not share. The dust absence documented through November revealed cascading implications institutions recognized but could not publicly acknowledge. Because if 3i Atlas is pure volatile without dust, every assumption about cometary threats to Earth requires revision, and those revisions lead to scenarios no government wants to discuss. Standard planetary defense models assume comet impacts deliver combination of kinetic energy, volatiles, and dust. Dust creates nuclear winter effect. Particles block sunlight, temperatures drop, crops fail. This is extinction mechanism from Chicxulub impact 66 million years ago. Models calculate dust lofted into stratosphere determines severity. More dust equals worse outcome. Standard 10-kilometer comet delivers approximately 10 trillion kilograms of silicate dust, enough to block 70% of sunlight for 2 years. Mass extinction threshold. But 3I Atlas changes calculation. Pure volatile comet delivers 0 silicate dust. Impact creates different threat profile. Volatiles vaporize on impact. Water becomes steam. Ammonia becomes gas. Hydrogen cyanide disperses as aerosol. No dust means no nuclear winter. Sounds better. It is actually worse, because volatile impacts create different threat. Atmospheric chemistry modification and toxic contamination on continental scale. Dr. Sarah Mitchell at Los Alamos modeled impact scenario for 3I Atlas composition hitting Earth at 30 kilometers per second. Impact energy, equivalent to 100 million megatons TNT, 7,000 times largest nuclear weapon ever tested. Energy vaporizes impactor and excavates crater 80 kilometers diameter, but vaporization of pure volatile composition creates chemically reactive atmospheric plume rather than inert silicate dust cloud. Mitchell's model calculated atmospheric dispersal of impact-generated chemicals. 3I Atlas composition includes 8.3 parts per thousand hydrogen cyanide. 10-kilometer pure volatile body contains approximately 400 billion kilograms total HCN. Impact vaporizes all of it. Plume rises into stratosphere. HCN is stable in stratosphere for months. Global wind patterns disperse plume. Within 6 weeks, HCN concentration in stratosphere reaches approximately 5 parts per billion globally. This concentration affects ozone chemistry. Catalytic ozone destruction similar to chlorofluorocarbon effect. Ozone depletion approximately 18% globally. UV radiation at surface increases by factor of 2.5. Crop damage, ecosystem disruption, skin cancer rates increase by orders of magnitude. But ozone depletion is not primary threat. HCN in stratosphere eventually descends through troposphere to surface. Descent occurs through precipitation. Rain scavenging brings stratospheric chemistry to ground level. Mitchell's model calculated surface HCN concentrations following stratospheric descent. Peak concentrations in rainfall, approximately 80 parts per million. This exceeds lethal dose for mammals by factor of 2,000. Any organism drinking rainwater during peak fallout period, dead within minutes. Freshwater contamination makes all surface water toxic for duration of fallout, estimated at 3 to 6 months. This is not extinction through cold and darkness. This is extinction through poisoning. Different mechanism, same outcome. Mitchell's report, dated November 24th, classified secret restricted data under Atomic Energy Act. Chemical weapon effects analysis typically receives lower classification. Why does impact scenario modeling require nuclear weapons level secrecy? Because model shows that object composition observed in 3I Atlas creates weapon level threat despite being natural astronomical body, or allegedly natural. If composition is evidence of design, classification makes different sense. Not protecting analysis of natural threat, but protecting conclusion about artificial weapon system. Army Research Institute of Chemical Defense conducted separate assessment examining whether 3I Atlas chemistry could be weaponized intentionally. Assessment asked, if hostile actor wanted to create chemical warfare agent delivery system with deniable origin, could comet-like object achieve this? Analysis concluded, delivery of volatile-rich, dust-free body-to-Earth impact would create toxic dispersal indistinguishable from natural impact while producing casualties exceeding all conventional chemical weapons combined. Plausible deniability preserved through apparent natural mechanism. This assessment raises horrifying question. Is 3I Atlas reconnaissance? Test of delivery mechanism. Demonstration that civilization capable of moving comet mass objects through interstellar space could threaten Earth through chemically optimized impactors while maintaining pretense of natural event. If civilization intended to destroy Earth while avoiding detection of deliberate attack, Pure volatile comet is perfect weapon, appears natural, causes extinction, leaves no evidence of artificial intervention. This logic explains institutional panic better than scientific curiosity explains it. If 3I Atlas is not natural comet but designed system, its composition reveals strategic threat assessment. Civilization that builds it understands chemistry will be analyzed. Civilization that builds it accepts that risk because demonstration value outweighs operational security. Demonstration says, we can deliver extinction-level chemical payloads to your planet, make it look like natural disaster, and you cannot prove otherwise. This is strategic deterrence through deniable capability demonstration. Whether this interpretation is correct or paranoid, overreaction depends on classified evidence not available to public. But institutional behavior, classification of impact models, chemical warfare assessments, rejection of papers discussing composition implications, restriction of data enabling independent analysis is consistent with threat assessment framework rather than scientific curiosity framework. Centers for Disease Control Modeling added additional threat dimension. If future interstellar object with 3I Atlas chemistry entered atmosphere as bolide, small body that does not reach ground but explodes at altitude, toxic gas plume would disperse without crater. December 1st, CDC model examined 10-meter diameter body with 3I Atlas composition entering at 15 kilometers per second. Body contains approximately 4 million kilograms of material. Atmospheric entry heats material to 3000 Kelvin. Thermal decomposition converts HCN to nitrogen gas and carbon monoxide, but incomplete combustion under turbulent entry produces toxic plume containing residual HCN, carbon monoxide, and nitrogen oxides. Model calculated ground level concentrations within 3-kilometer radius of airburst. HCN up to 50 parts per million, carbon monoxide up to 300 parts per million. Both exceed lethal thresholds. Predicted casualties within exposure zone, 10,000 to 50,000 depending on population density. CDC model emphasized this is extremely unlikely given rarity of interstellar impacts, but model was developed and distributed to FEMA. December 10th, FEMA budget request included $15 million for chemical exposure response for non-traditional threat vectors. This creates preparedness infrastructure for scenarios CDC called extremely unlikely. Why prepare for unlikely scenario unless probability assessment has changed? What information revised probability upward sufficiently to justify federal disaster response funding? One explanation: 3I Atlas is not unique. If one pure volatile interstellar object exists, others exist. If others exist and their trajectories intersect Earth orbit, impact probability becomes non-negligible. Survey programs to identify similar objects then become priority. This explains NASA December 23rd announcement, $200 million chemical resource survey program targeting 10,000 objects, framed as science, actually functions as threat assessment. Every pure volatile object identified becomes both resource opportunity and potential impact threat. Survey data classified under ITAR simultaneously protects commercial advantage and prevents adversary nations from identifying same targets for exploitation or weaponization. But this creates strategic instability. If valuable objects exist in solar system and multiple nations identify them simultaneously, competition for access rights creates conflict scenarios. If objects can be redirected for resource extraction, same technology enables redirection for impact weapons. Object that can be moved to profitable orbit can be moved to Earth-crossing orbit. Capability for space resource utilization is dual-use technology enabling planetary-scale weapons. This explains December 15th, NASA Working Group agenda item discussing scenarios involving approach to or landing on dust-free emitting surface. Landing technology enables resource extraction. Also enables planting propulsion systems for trajectory modification. Also enables turning asteroid into kinetic weapon. Private space companies recognize this immediately. Between November 20th and December 10th, 3 companies, Planetary Resources, Deep Space Industries, TransAstra, filed patents for dust-free volatile collection systems and trajectory modification for cohesive ice bodies. Patents describe systems for landing on, sampling, and redirecting objects with 3I Atlas properties. Trajectory modification is necessary for resource extraction, bringing object to accessible orbit. also necessary for impact weapon, sending object to Earth. Patents avoid mentioning weapons applications, but enabling technologies are identical. Why file patents within 3-week window unless information indicating near-term commercial and strategic value became available? SpaceX December 4th FCC application for specialized communications for deep space chemical prospecting includes timeline showing launches beginning 2027, 18 months away. Timeline suggests mission planning is already advanced. Planning requires target selection. Target selection requires knowing where objects exist. Where did SpaceX obtain information about target locations if NASA survey program was only announced December 23rd and data is classified? Either SpaceX has classified access through government contracts, or independent detection capability exists, or information leaked. Any explanation indicates institutional coordination extending beyond public announcements. International responses show threat recognition. Chinese Academy declining NASA coordination December 12th signaled intent to pursue independent survey and exploitation. China would not invest resources unless assessment concluded objects exist and have value. Value is economic from resources or strategic from weapons potential. Either way, competition is beginning. Commerce Department placing Chinese astronomical institutions on Entity List December 14th was not scientific dispute. This was strategic technology denial, attempting to prevent Chinese identification of targets U.S. considers strategically valuable. This is behavior of nations competing for military advantage, not scientists pursuing knowledge. European Space Agency December 16th announcement of Interstellar Object Rendezvous mission study with 2030 target date indicates European assessment that objects warrant dedicated missions. Timeline is aggressive. Normal mission development takes 5 to 7 years. Announcing mission study 4 months after object discovery means assessment concluded priority, justifies accelerated development. What assessment justifies spending billions on mission to object that will be unreachable by mission availability timeframe? Only explanation: mission targets different object with similar properties. ESA knows or expects others exist. Mission development prepares capability to reach them. Capability for scientific investigation is also capability for resource extraction or trajectory modification. Financial markets response shows informed trading based on non-public information. $230 million in profits from chemical company stock options purchased November. Positions taken by entities with classified access or leaked information. SEC investigation means leakage is confirmed. Information flowed from classified assessments to financial markets. Market positioning ahead of public announcements. This indicates classified information has monetary value. Information about what? About objects that will be identified, about technologies that will be developed, about government contracts that will be awarded, about strategic competition that will unfold. Someone knew these developments were coming. That knowledge came from classified assessments. Those assessments reach conclusions justifying investments expecting specific outcomes. Insurance industry responses reveal risk modeling that includes scenarios not publicly discussed. Space operations premiums up 31% by December. New exclusion for anomalous, dust-free volatile bodies. Actuaries price risks based on probability and consequence. What probability and consequence analysis produces 31% premium increase? Standard models include debris collision risk, solar storm risk, micrometeorite damage. These risks are well characterized. Premium increases reflect new risk category. Risk of what? Collision with unidentified dust-free objects, chemical contamination from volatile encounters, weaponization of redirected bodies. Insurance documents do not specify, but premiums reflect calculated expectation of losses. Losses from events insurance industry believes will occur with sufficient frequency to justify permanent rate increases. Meanwhile, observation window is closing. 3i Atlas beyond Mars orbit as of late December. Surface temperature 150 Kelvin. Activity ceased. Object becomes too faint for spectroscopy by June. Physical investigation opportunity ending, but institutional responses accelerating rather than declining. If object is departing and cannot be further studied, why are budgets increasing, programs launching, patents filing, and international competition intensifying? Because object itself is not primary concern. What object represents is concern. evidence that pure volatile bodies exist, evidence that billion-year radiation processing creates specific surface properties, evidence that interstellar space delivers objects that violate solar system formation models, evidence, if paranoid interpretation is correct, that technological civilization demonstrated capability to deliver chemically optimized extinction weapons while maintaining plausible natural appearance. Whether technological interpretation is real or institutional overreaction, misinterpreting natural anomaly as artificial threat, outcomes are converging. Resources are being committed, capabilities are being developed, international competition is emerging, strategic frameworks are being established, all predicated on assessment that 3i Atlas reveals something requiring comprehensive institutional response. Response pattern suggests institutions concluded either object is non-natural and represents intelligence, or similar objects exist in accessible locations and represent strategic assets worth competing for, or both. Public remains largely unaware. Mainstream media coverage minimal, 30 articles since July. None discussing institutional responses. Alternative media producing 500 videos reaching 40 million views. But alternative media lacks access to verify claims. Information exists in fragments and leaks. Complete picture requires classified data access. Pew Research polling shows 15% of Americans believe government withholding information about object. Belief exists without understanding what specifically is being withheld or why. Awareness is spreading through informal channels, while official channels maintain limited conventional narrative. This information asymmetry creates vulnerability. If crisis emerges, another interstellar object detected on Earth-crossing trajectory, confirmation of non-natural origin, revelation of strategic competition reaching conflict, discovery that technological civilization monitoring Earth through proxies, public will be unprepared. No context for understanding, no framework for response. Institutions will have prepared for months, while public receives information suddenly, without preparation. Historical precedent shows rushed disclosure creates panic. Gradual disclosure allows adjustment, but gradual disclosure requires transparency institutions have refused. Choice to maintain secrecy while preparing institutional responses guarantees chaotic rather than managed public reaction when disclosure occurs. And disclosure will occur. Information control is failing. Leaks continue. Papers will eventually publish through alternative venues. International cooperation is fracturing, eliminating coordination that enables suppression. Chinese data will be released openly. Russian observations will appear. European scientists frustrated with restrictions will find workarounds. Whistleblowers within agencies will provide documents. Financial markets will price in developments revealing institutional knowledge. Patterns will become undeniable even without official confirmation. Control is temporary. Disclosure is inevitable. Only timing remains variable. Institutions know this. Their response is not preventing disclosure, but managing timing while establishing positions and capabilities ahead of public knowledge. Race against information diffusion. Developing technologies, filing patents, surveying locations, creating legal frameworks, negotiating international agreements, allocating budgets, all before public awareness creates political pressures complicating institutional autonomy. This is rational strategy from institutional perspective. Create facts on ground before public opinion becomes factor, but strategy requires maintaining information control until positions are secured. Control is already slipping. Positions are not yet secured. Timeline is compressed. Risk of premature disclosure grows daily. What happens if disclosure occurs before institutional preparations complete? What happens if public learns 3i Atlas is potentially artificial before government's ready to explain implications? What happens if China or Russia discloses first, framing narrative around U.S. information suppression? What happens if financial markets crash based on leaked assessments indicating extinction-level threats from redirectable objects? What happens if religious institutions interpret non-natural intelligence as theological crisis? What happens if public demands immediate defense measures requiring resources not yet allocated? These scenarios are why information remains controlled, not to protect public from knowledge, but to protect institutions from consequences of knowledge. Because knowledge creates demands institutions cannot yet meet. Demands for explanation, for defense, for international cooperation rather than competition, for transparency about assessments, for accountability about resources committed to secret programs, for civilian oversight of strategic decisions. All demands that constrain institutional autonomy institutions are not willing to accept. So, information remains controlled, while dust absence, physical fact confirmed beyond dispute, is treated as strategic intelligence requiring classification, while pure volatile composition, analytical conclusion following directly from measurements, is hidden behind rejected papers and restricted data, while institutional responses revealing assessment conclusions, budget redirections, program establishments, international competitions proceed without public explanation or oversight. 3i Atlas is departing. Evidence is archived. Institutional responses are accelerating. Public remains uninformed. And every day of maintained secrecy increases severity of disruption when secrecy fails. Because secrecy will fail. Information wants distribution. Control attempts create pressure. Pressure seeks release. Release will come either through managed disclosure or uncontrolled leak. Institutions appear committed to former while creating conditions guaranteeing latter. This is trajectory toward chaos, masquerading as stability. Trajectory visible to anyone examining institutional behavior rather than accepting official narratives. Behavior that reveals dust absence means something institutions believe requires strategic management, international coordination, budgetary commitment, and public ignorance. What specifically it means remains classified, but consequences of classification, strategic instability, information asymmetry, preparation without oversight, competition without transparency are already manifesting, and those consequences will shape human response to whatever comes next, regardless of whether what comes is natural anomaly requiring scientific explanation or artificial visitor requiring civilizational reckoning. By late December, the implications of dust absence converge into scenarios institutions understand but cannot publicly address, because understanding leads to questions with no acceptable answers. Questions about what 3i Atlas actually is. Questions about whether others exist. Questions about what comes next. And, most disturbing, questions about whether arrival was accident or intention. 3i Atlas trajectory analysis completed November by Dr. Antonio Ramirez at European Southern Observatory showed anomaly not previously disclosed. Standard interstellar trajectory is hyperbolic. Object approaches from infinity, swings around sun, departs to infinity. Simple gravitational interaction. 3i Atlas trajectory is hyperbolic, but parameters are statistically unusual. Perihelion distance, 0.54 astronomical units. Orbital inclination, 87 degrees, nearly perpendicular to planetary plane. Argument of perihelion, positions closest approach directly opposite Earth's December position. These parameters mean object missed Earth by maximum possible margin while still passing through inner solar system. If trajectory aimed to observe Earth without close approach, this geometry is optimal, provides view of Earth from safe distance, while perihelion passage near Sun tests object's thermal response and triggers maximum activity. If trajectory is natural, random arrival from interstellar space, parameters this specific are unlikely. Probability calculation by Dr. Ramirez, approximately 0.03%. 30 times less likely than random trajectory with different parameters. Dr. Ramirez submitted trajectory analysis paper November 8th, rejected December 1st without review. Desk rejection stated, trajectory analysis conclusions rely on statistical arguments that do not adequately account for observational selection effects. Selection effects occur when detection methods bias observed sample, like finding more bright objects because dim objects are missed. But 3i Atlas was detected at distance of 4 astronomical units. Far beyond selection threshold, detection method would have found objects on any trajectory. Selection effects do not apply. Yet paper rejected on these grounds. Why does trajectory analysis showing unlikely parameters warrant rejection based on inapplicable statistical concern? Because trajectory analysis combined with dust absence creates narrative institutions once suppressed. Trajectory suggests intentional approach optimized for observation. Dust absence suggests engineered composition. Thermal anomalies suggest internal power source. Chemical composition suggests synthesis. Each anomaly independently might be natural extremity. Combined, they create profile matching designed reconnaissance system more closely than they match natural comet. And if trajectory was chosen rather than random, arrival is not chance encounter, but deliberate reconnaissance. By whom? For what purpose? These questions have no comfortable answers. Dr. Hannah Kozlov at McDonald Observatory conducted independent trajectory backtracking, attempting to identify origin star system. Trajectory calculations integrated backward through time, accounting for gravitational effects of known stars and galactic dynamics. Backtracking shows 3i Atlas came from direction of constellation Lyra, within 10 degrees of trajectory origin, approximately 2,000 stars within 50 light-years. Most promising candidates, 7 G-type stars similar to Sun, at distances 32 to 48 light-years. Travel time at 3i Atlas velocity of 58 kilometers per second, 600,000 to 900,000 years. This is feasible time frame for interstellar cruise, but it is also time frame requiring extraordinary technical capability. Object traveling 900,000 years must maintain structural integrity against cosmic ray damage, micrometeorite erosion, and thermal cycling. Requires either exceptional material properties or active maintenance systems. Natural comet would degrade over this time frame. Volatiles would sublimate from cosmic ray heating. Structure would fragment from impacts. Yet 3i Atlas arrived intact with enough volatiles to produce massive gas emission at perihelion. Either it is not 900,000 years old, contradicting trajectory calculations, or it is protected by mechanisms not present in natural comets. If protected, mechanisms imply design. If design exists, intelligence exists. If intelligence exists at distance of 32 to 48 light-years, humanity is not alone. This conclusion follows from measurements and trajectory analysis. Yet conclusion cannot be officially stated without extraordinary supporting evidence. Dr. Kozlov's backtracking paper submitted to Nature December 2nd, rejected December 18th, 16 days. Rejection stated, origin star system identification requires assumptions about stellar motions and galactic potential that introduce uncertainties, making conclusions speculative. All trajectory backtracking requires these assumptions. Previous papers using identical methods were published in Nature without uncertainty concerns. This specific paper identifying plausible origin stars for potentially artificial object is deemed too speculative. What makes identifying where object came from more speculative than any other trajectory study? Meanwhile, classified assessments reached conclusions not reflected in public statements. Leaked memo from National Security Council meeting December 12th addressed strategic planning scenarios for interstellar contact events. Memo discussed response frameworks for detection of additional objects with 3i Atlas characteristics and protocols for managing public information if artificial origin becomes consensus. Language indicates NSC planners treat artificial origin as plausible scenario requiring contingency planning. Not fringe speculation, but assessed possibility, justifying presidential-level strategic planning. Memo outlined 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, additional objects detected on Earth approach trajectories indicating systematic survey operations. Response framework includes enhanced detection networks, international coordination to prevent panic, and assessment of whether survey activity is prelim inary to direct contact or invasion. Scenario 2, no additional objects detected, but 3i Atlas characteristics confirmed as artificial through additional analysis. Response framework includes controlled disclosure, emphasizing peaceful reconnaissance, interpretation, and international cooperation on response protocols. Scenario 3. Evidence emerges indicating 3i Atlas was not reconnaissance but weapon test. Response framework classified, but memo notes it involves protocols typically reserved for nuclear threat scenarios. These scenarios are being planned at highest levels of government, while public remains unaware object is considered potentially artificial. Why plan for scenarios if assessment concludes natural origin is certain? Planning occurs because assessment is uncertain and consequences of being wrong are catastrophic. If object is artificial scout and additional waves arrive, unpreparedness guarantees chaos. If object is weapon test, demonstrating chemically optimized extinction capability, failure to recognize threat guarantees strategic surprise. Planning for scenarios treats them as real possibilities requiring preparation regardless of probability. Department of Defense established December 15th Joint Task Force for Anomalous Space Object Assessment under U.S. Space Command. Task Force combines intelligence analysts, astrophysicists, chemical weapons specialists, and strategic planners. Existence disclosed through budget documents, but mission details classified. Task Force mandate obtained through leak. Assess threat profile of interstellar objects exhibiting properties inconsistent with natural formation and develop response protocols for various encounter scenarios, including peaceful reconnaissance, hostile surveillance, and preemptive weapons testing. This language treats 3I Atlas as potential threat requiring military analysis. Peaceful reconnaissance is best case. Hostile surveillance is concerning. Preemptive weapons testing is nightmare scenario implying civilization that sends 3I Atlas might send weapons next. Task Force planning for all scenarios means assessment concluded all remain possible. Military does not plan responses to impossible threats. Planning indicates assessment. Threat is real, nature is uncertain, preparation is necessary. Task Force includes personnel from National Reconnaissance Office, Satellite Intelligence Agency. NRO involvement means optical and infrared space surveillance assets are being tasked to search for additional objects. NRO satellites designed to track adversary satellites and missile launches, now tracking potential interstellar threats. This is major mission expansion justified only if threat assessment warrants diversion of strategic intelligence assets. What assessment justifies using spy satellites to watch for comets? International coordination shows parallel preparations. NATO held classified briefing December 19th for alliance defense ministers addressing emerging unconventional threat vectors from space domain. Briefing included 3I Atlas technical assessment. NATO communique following briefing stated only that alliance continues monitoring space security environment, but leaked briefing materials included discussion of response protocols if additional anomalous interstellar arrivals exhibit trajectory characteristics suggesting hostile intent. NATO is preparing military responses to interstellar objects. This happens only if objects are assessed as potential military threats. Natural comets do not warrant NATO military planning. Russia announced December 21st establishment of Special Space Phenomena Assessment Unit under Russian Space Forces. Unit mission: monitor for objects entering solar system from external sources and assess strategic implications of unusual space phenomena. Russian media coverage emphasized natural astronomical monitoring, but unit placement under Space Forces military organization indicates assessment extends beyond scientific curiosity. Russia is preparing military responses to space phenomena. What phenomena justify military preparation? China remained publicly silent, but activity is visible. Chinese space station crew conducted December observations using telescopes specifically targeting regions where additional interstellar objects would be detectable if approaching from similar directions as 3I Atlas. Observations are not routine astronomical survey, targeted search for specific object class from specific directions. Why search if assessing additional objects is unlikely? Search indicates Chinese assessment concludes more objects may exist and detection is priority. Commercial responses accelerated. Blue Origin, December 8th. Partnership with Chinese company Origin Space for space resource technology circumvents U.S. export controls by conducting development in China. Partnership enables access to Chinese detection data and resource survey results. If China identifies accessible pure volatile objects, Blue Origin gains commercial access, while U.S. government restrictions apply to domestic competitors. This is strategic positioning for competition that has not yet been publicly acknowledged. Why position for competition if objects to compete for do not exist? SpaceX mission planning advanced without public announcement. Satellite industry sources reported December that SpaceX booked Falcon Heavy launches for 2027 payloads described as deep space prospecting missions. Booking launch vehicles 3 years in advance requires mission planning significantly advanced. Planning requires target selection. Targets are objects similar to 3I Atlas composition. How did SpaceX identify targets if no such objects have been publicly cataloged? Financial markets continued pricing in developments. January options for chemical companies and space contractors showed elevated implied volatility Market expectation of significant price movements, suggesting traders anticipate major announcements or developments. Options are pricing events that have not occurred. What events do markets anticipate? Why anticipate them in January specifically? What information suggests January timeline for significant developments? Insurance industry behavior revealed expectations. New policies issued after January 1st include coverage limitations for space operations disrupted by encounter with unidentified objects exhibiting anomalous chemical or thermal properties. This is extraordinarily specific exclusion. Standard policies cover generic risks. Specific exclusions target identified threats. What identified threat involves encountering objects with anomalous chemistry? Why are such encounters expected with sufficient probability to justify changing policy language? Academic community fragmentation became public. American Astronomical Society Winter Meeting, January 6 through 10, scheduled 6 sessions on interstellar objects. All 6 canceled January 3rd with explanation, scheduling conflicts requiring program adjustments. Alternative explanation from leaked organizing committee emails. Sessions canceled after multiple speakers withdrew following institutional pressure not to present 3i Atlas findings publicly. Pressure came from NASA, DOE, and defense agencies employing or funding researchers. Institutions prevented their scientists from presenting research at public conference. Why prevent public presentation of scientific findings if findings are conventional astronomical results? This obstruction created backlash. January 10th open letter signed by 147 scientists demanded immediate data release and end to publication obstruction. Letter accused agencies of prioritizing institutional control over scientific progress and warned continued restrictions will drive researchers to foreign institutions offering academic freedom. Letter represents public break between scientific community and government agencies. Break occurs because scientists recognize obstruction is not scientific disagreement, but strategic control. Control over what? Over information agencies assessed as strategically sensitive. Why is dust absence strategically sensitive unless implications extend beyond science into security domains? Meanwhile, physical evidence continues accumulating. Ground-based observations through December detected no dust despite gas emission continuing. Parker Solar Probe, January close pass captured additional images showing continued absence. Every observation confirms anomaly, yet every paper explaining anomaly encounters rejection. Pattern is consistent across international institutions. Journals in US, Europe, Japan, all rejecting papers. Coordination extends globally. Why does dust absence require global publication suppression unless all governments reach similar assessment requiring similar control? And object is departing. January distance exceeds 1.2 astronomical units. Activity declining. Surface temperature 140 Kelvin. Gas emission below detection threshold. By March, object becomes too faint for spectroscopy. By June, too faint for imaging. Observation window closing, yet institutional responses accelerating. Budgets increasing. Programs launching. International tensions rising. Military planning intensifying. Commercial competition emerging. All occurring as object becomes unobservable. If object is leaving and can't threaten Earth on departure trajectory, why are threat preparations increasing? Because threat is not from 3i Atlas, but from what 3i Atlas represents. If natural pure volatile comets exist in accessible locations, they represent resources and weapons. If pure volatiles indicate artificial composition, 3i Atlas represents reconnaissance by intelligence monitoring Earth. If reconnaissance is confirmed, contact scenarios activate. Contact with intelligence possessing interstellar travel capability. Intelligence that chose Earth for observation. Intelligence that may return. These implications justify institutional responses regardless of current threat from departing object. But implications remain unspoken. Official statements maintain dust absence is unexplained natural phenomenon requiring additional research. Unofficially, institutions prepare for scenarios treating object as reconnaissance probe from intelligence 32 to 48 light-years distant possessing technology, enabling 900,000-year interstellar voyages while maintaining operational capabilities. Gap between official statements and unofficial preparations is widening. Gap creates information asymmetry. Asymmetry creates vulnerability. If intelligence sent 3i Atlas and more probes follow, public will learn through detection rather than disclosure. Unprepared public faces revelations without context. Historical parallels are not encouraging. Sudden paradigm shifts create social instability. Religious institutions face theological crises. Political institutions face legitimacy questions. Economic systems face confidence collapse, all because information was withheld during preparation phase, leaving public without adjustment period. If intelligence sent 3i Atlas as test or demonstration, message is being received by institutions but not by public. Message says, "We exist, we can reach you. We understand chemistry enables extinction scenarios. We delivered demonstration you cannot explain naturally but cannot prove artificially. Your move." This is communication through ambiguity, demonstrating capability while maintaining deniability. If institutions recognized message, their response, frantic preparation, strategic planning, international coordination, military mobilization makes sense. But response occurs in secret, while public remains unaware message may exist. If message exists and public learns of it without preparation, questions arise institutions cannot comfortably answer. Why was message hidden? What other messages exist? Are we in danger? What are our capabilities? Do we have response? Can we communicate back? Should we? Each question cascades into more questions. Questions about competence, transparency, authority, trust. Questions that undermine institutional legitimacy if answers reveal prolonged deception. But deception was chosen. Risk of premature disclosure was assessed as greater than risk of eventual exposure. Near-term stability prioritized over long-term trust. Rational institutional calculation, but calculation assumed control would hold until preparations completed. Control is not holding. Leaks accelerate. International coordination fragments. Scientific community revolts. Financial markets front-run developments. Public awareness grows through alternative channels. Timeline is compressing. Disclosure approaches whether controlled or chaotic. And when disclosure comes, through leak, through whistleblower, through Chinese announcement, through detection of additional object, through financial crash pricing in extinction scenarios, through religious leader declaring theological crisis, through any of 1,000 unpredictable pathways, questions will focus not just on what 3i Atlas is, but on why information was withheld, why scientists were silenced, why data was classified, why papers were rejected, why public was kept ignorant while institutions prepared. Answers to these questions will determine whether transition is managed or catastrophic. Institutions chose secrecy. Secrecy is failing. Failure point approaches. 3i Atlas is departing carrying its secrets. But secrets remain in classified files, restricted databases, rejected manuscripts, leaked memos, suspended security clearances, canceled conference sessions, and behavior patterns of institutions preparing for scenarios they refuse to name. Evidence of dust that should exist but does not. Evidence of composition that should not exist but does. Evidence of trajectory that should be random but appears targeted. Evidence of institutional response that should be scientific but is strategic. Evidence accumulating despite suppression. Evidence that will eventually force conclusions institutions reached months ago but cannot yet acknowledge. The dust is missing. This is fact. Why dust is missing leads to possibilities institutions find unacceptable for public knowledge. Natural explanations failed. Artificial explanations remain unproven. Ambiguity persists. But ambiguity requires no action if object is benign curiosity. Ambiguity requires urgent action if object is reconnaissance, weapon test, or contact attempt. Institutions chose action. Action reveals assessment even if assessment remains classified. They believe dust absence means something important enough to redirect billions, something threatening enough to involve military, something strategically significant enough to fragment international cooperation, something complicated enough to require secrecy during preparation period. But period is ending. Object departs. Evidence remains. Institutional responses continue. Public awareness grows. Disclosure timeline shrinks. Questions multiply. What did institutions conclude? When will public learn? How will disclosure occur? What comes after? Will there be more? Can we respond? Should we hide or signal? Are we already too late? These questions have no answers in public record. Answers exist in classified assessments produced by institutions that examined complete data and concluded present course was necessary. Whether course is correct or represents historic misjudgment will become clear only when either additional objects arrive confirming intelligence origin or decades pass without follow-up indicating 3I Atlas was natural anomaly blown out of proportion by institutional paranoia. Either outcome resolves ambiguity. Neither outcome restores trust destroyed by secrecy. That damage is permanent. Cost of chosen strategy regardless of whether strategy was necessary. 3I Atlas is leaving. Humanity remains. Changed by encounter we do not yet understand. Preparing for scenarios we have not been told. Racing toward disclosure we cannot control. Facing possibilities we are not ready to accept. This is state as object fades from view. Evidence documented. Implications assessed. Responses coordinated. Public uninformed. Timeline compressed. Control failing. Truth approaching. Ready or not.